Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I trust that we all had a good lunch. So we are going to start back up again with a panel discussion on supporting the digital economy. This panel is being moderated by ISOC's own Secretary David Smith. Are you wearing your UB hat? Okay, so yes, he's wearing his ISOC hat. So I'll hand over to David now.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Ashel mentioned, my name is David Smith, and I'm the Secretary of the Barbados chapter of the Internet Society. And I have been asked to moderate this panel on the topic supporting the internet economy. I'm joined by 4 distinguished panelists who represent different stakeholders in the internet economy ecosystem and can hopefully bring their own unique perspectives to the discussion. Our panelists are directly to my left is Mr. Adrian Reid. Adrian is a serial entrepreneur. He started a marketing strategy and direct marketing company, an import-export business in the Netherlands, and a school meal delivery company in Barbados, and is co-founder of Vision Funder, which is a Caribbean crowdfunding portal. He is a seasoned business professional with over 17 years of management consultancy, strategic marketing, and business development experience. He holds an MBA with a concentration in entrepreneurship and strategic marketing from the University of Surrey. He's worked with various companies throughout the Caribbean, the United States, and Ghana, West Africa, conducting workshops and providing advisory services to facilitate business growth. He's passionate about spreading a love for business and developing the next generation of business professionals. In 2010, he was awarded a position as business specialist at Apple to strengthen the business development and marketing of their new strategic business unit by identifying opportunities for growth and expansion in the North American market. For the past 3 years, Adrian has worked extensively with the services sector in Barbados with a focus on improving global competitiveness of the creative industry and ICT sectors respectively. Currently, Adrian works with a seasoned executive team on identifying socioeconomic problems in the Caribbean, Latin America, and West Africa, and building business models to address those problems. Vision Funder is one of those business models to address the challenge of access to affordable and appropriate finance for Caribbean people. Directly next to him, we have Mr. Hanseley Straughn, who has spent 10 years as a management development officer in the Office of Public Sector Reform. He has an extensive knowledge of the workings and challenges facing the public service, and for the last 7 years, he has transitioned to the Ministry of the Civil Service as an e-government development officer, where he's responsible for the development, information, and implementation, of the government's digital strategy. To his left is Mrs. Sonia Mahon. She's a lecturer in the Department of Management Studies and the Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences. She was educated at the University of West Indies and Boston University, where she did her postgraduate degree in Management Information Systems and Information Technology. In addition to teaching courses in IT and Management Information Systems at both the graduate and undergraduate levels, she has been instrumental in redesigning various courses, coordinating responsibilities for several undergraduate programs, and supervising postgraduate and undergraduate students with their independent research projects. She was also a pioneer in developing and using digital and online tools to supplement and enhance teaching and learning. She's developed several computer training programs and software solutions and has worked on consultations with various agencies such as the Pan American Health Organization and the Inter-American Development Bank, and more recently as an active member of one of the working groups for the Barbados Human Resource Development Strategy. In an administrative capacity, Ms. Mahon has served and serves on several UE committees, including Academic Board, Campus Committee on Examinations, the Student Advisory Committee, and Campus Academic Quality Assurance Committee. Her research interest lies primarily in the area of competitiveness and attitudes towards ICTs, and I think those are going to be particularly relevant for this afternoon's panel. And she's co-authored several refereed articles and conference papers, many of which address issues of the impact and value of ICTs. She's presently working on strengthening student advising on the campus through refining the IT and human resources. And finally, furthest to the left, we have Mr. Andrew Dixon, who currently holds the position of Vice President of the Solutions Group of Fujitsu Caribbean and is based in Barbados. In this position, he manages a team of solutions architects who are responsible for the design of solutions across all technologies sold by Fujitsu. The team consists of architects specializing in data center solutions, networking, security, unified communications, database technology, and applications. He has worked for over 20 years in information technology, which spans a wide background of application development, database, unified communications, networking, and security. He has held numerous positions within different companies in the capacity of supervisor, senior consultant, lead architect, and integration manager. He holds a master's degree in computer science from the University of West Indies and several industry certifications ranging from vendor-specific advanced qualifications to vendor-neutral qualifications such as the CISSP. That said, what we would like to do now is have a discussion around some of the things related to the internet economy. Yesterday, we had quite a bit of discussion regarding things like legislation, gaps harming businesses. We went through an exercise that focused on the Computer Misuse Act, and we identified some gaps in that. We were informed that of the fact that the Data Protection Act has been in draft for quite some time. So as a result of all these things, it's clear that we have some work to do in advocating with the powers that be from a regulatory framework. We also heard from BIT and North Point in relation to their own experiences attempting to grow regionally and globally competitive businesses within the constraints we have. Notwithstanding those constraints, we're hoping that we can bring together some different perspectives on a few things. And I would pose these questions both to the panelists and to the audience, both in the room and online, to try to spark some discussion. Some of the questions are: one, is there realistic hope for the internet economy becoming a significant driver of economic growth? Two, beyond the legislation, what do you see as factors hindering the growth of a vibrant internet economy? How can we overcome these factors? And that would include advocating for getting legislation actioned. What can each organization and stakeholder group contribute individually and together to tackle the constraints and ultimately build an internet economy? And most importantly, because we don't want it to be just talk, what are the next steps? Where do we go from here? So I look forward to a thought-provoking discussion, and I invite Mr. Reid to offer a few words.
First off, let me say good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I stated in my bio, my company, LegaciGlobal, what we really look to do is look at different social and economic challenges in our region, developing countries in particular, and try to build business models around those problems to bring solutions to those problems. 3 years ago, I would say, give or take, we decided to look at the whole issue of access to finance for entrepreneurs, young first-time entrepreneurs, and the whole issue that they had in terms of getting access to finance from banks and that whole challenge. Prior to that, of course, I would have been working with entrepreneurs for the last 10 years, and the consistent issue that I was seeing over that period of time is passionate entrepreneurs, great ideas, sometimes even great teams, but then no money or difficulty in getting money. And we decided to look at that issue through crowdfunding. And so using crowdfunding as my backdrop and example in terms of the whole issue of internet economy and the challenge that we've seen in that space. And what those, I would say 3 years, 2 years have brought to bear is looking at this whole issue from two lenses. One is the people issue, and then the other is the infrastructural issue. And sometimes I think that we overlook or underestimate the challenge that the human element brings to the table. And let me explain what I mean by that. Because it was extremely enlightening for me during those years to find out how resistant, or B, ignorant, not in terms of being dumb, just not knowing, persons are in terms of really engaging the internet and e-commerce for business. Yeah? Oh, okay. And one of the challenges there is, so of course, if you were able to get legislation right, if we were able, of course, to fill in the gaps in our ecosystem and structure, and persons still have the timidity or still have the lack of knowledge in engaging services and product services using internet and reading on the backbone of e-commerce, we're still, find ourselves in the same place we were at the very beginning. So one of the things that we found interesting is the level of education we had to invest in, and time we had to invest in teaching people how to use, how to engage, how to view, how to overcome the fears of credit card fraud and identity theft, and those issues that surround business on the internet. And surprisingly, how deep-rooted those things are. Of course, sometimes, at least from our standpoint, it was interesting because those are not convos that are normally had. But of course, in engaging in building the business, those fears came to bear, and the amount of work that still has to be done in terms of alleviating the fears of the public in using products and services online transactions, credit card information, and those things surrounding that. I'm gonna pause there for now, and to let my colleague put in a few words.
Hey, thank you, Adrian, and good afternoon all. First off, I'd like to thank the sponsors and obviously Internet Society for giving this opportunity to have this discussion with you guys. First off, I will give you just some background or some context in terms of e-government, where we are at and where we came from. I will start going back to the 1990s and just set the context. Back in the 1990s, one, I would say, important initiative that basically set the tone to where we are now is the liberalization of our telecommunications sector. That made a big difference, and I guess in the previous section, we mentioned where we are in terms of our technical infrastructure. That goes back to that liberalization of the telecommunications sector, and that set the background to have one of the most superior technical infrastructures in the region, if not the world, in terms of our connectivity. All right, so I start there. Going back to 2006, we actually implemented the first government strategy, which concentrated, I would say, inward, trying to strengthen the internal systems, trying to consolidate, trying to put initiatives in place for cost savings. I would say that over the last 10 years or so, we were able to achieve about 80% of the major objectives. And one of the major objectives was, I would say, was the actual Moderator network. That was a challenge because obviously our Moderator network costs money. So you can imagine the cost of a Moderator network going back to 2006. We were able to achieve that particular objective only last year, thanks to the European Union and the HRD project that was mentioned in the previous presentation. We were able to secure funding. And I would say now that we actually have a state-of-the-art high-speed network connecting majority of government agencies. So I would say that is one. Another challenge that we had, or another objective, was basically to look at the whole governance framework, and that is the challenge. All right. Going back to 2006, we actually came up with an institutional framework which will look at basically having a central electricity agency. Because if you are familiar with the public service, you realize that electricity is actually splintered across the public service. There are actually about 4 agencies responsible for different facets of electricity. I'm from the Ministry of the Civil Service, responsible for e-government. There's also the Ministry of Commerce, responsible for e-commerce. There's also the Ministry of Education, responsible for innovation. Right? There's also telecoms units under the Prime Minister's office, responsible for telecoms regulation. All right, so that's not necessarily the best structure in terms of obviously promoting electricity. All right, so that is an area that we obviously have to address again going forward. I don't have much time. I will just touch on what we are doing now in terms of the new e-government strategy. The new e-government strategy was started last year. We actually have a working draft. This strategy concentrates now on citizen-centric services, which is basically an issue that we were discussing all week. We have to get services to our citizens. We have to be more citizen-centric. So this plan actually concentrates on that particular area, all right? And I will be happy to discuss more details of the plan, but I would just leave a note to say that basically the biggest challenge or the hindrance, I would say, for us is not the technology, it's the people and the process. And if you're familiar with government, that is a big, big challenge, but we are actually up to the task, right? So we have to come up with new strategies to be able to address that area, all right? But it's a challenge, and I really hear some feedback from you guys. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and that's a great segue to my prelude or my remarks. Just want to do the disclaimer up front. So I am here as a representative of the UE, but my remarks are not going to be binding to the UE. So I'm not speaking for the UE at the moment. So I just wanted to have that disclaimer up front. Some of the comments that I might make this afternoon are my personal observations over the years and some of the challenges and so on that I see in front of us, although I like to flip challenges to opportunities. So I'm smiling when I hear of some of the capacity issues, particularly in the public sector, because that's part of what we are going to be here to help with. This conference comes in a timely manner, actually. Unfortunately, this week is university cross-campus meetings, and that's why you're not seeing a lot of the academics, because we are in meetings, but we are in meetings across the street. And I had to reassure David that, yes, I will come from the meetings, and I will be here this evening as committed to be on the panel. You're going to shortly hear more of our new strategic plan. I just want you to keep in mind that you're going to hear about the AAA. It's not a AAA threat. It's not a FET. It's not a bashment. It is our new strategic pillars of alignment, access, and agility, as we recognize the need for the university, the very big ship that is the UWI, which is spread over the entire region, to be more responsive and relevant and engaging with our publics. One of the things that we are proud of is that in our 70 years, next year we'll be celebrating our 70 years of existence, that we remain committed to the roles and responsibilities that we've been given, and it becomes ever increasingly difficult to be a public institution, but in a almost private framework, and how do we balance those roles and responsibilities. To quote directly from the Vice Chancellor, Sir Hilary Beckles, he reminds us that we are to be responsible in building our own economic competitiveness and to keep our house in good operational order so that we can become re-energized as we re-engage both locally, regionally, and indeed internationally. And he likes to remind us that the university is not meant to serve ourselves. We are here and we are resourced by the peoples of the Caribbean to serve our communities and indeed our nations, so that we are not here because we want to be here just for us. Universities around the world are transitioning from primarily delivering education at the undergraduate level to becoming, providing knowledge through research. So over the years, you would have seen us really be involved in capacity building, particularly at the Cayfield campus at the undergraduate level. You have seen a change or a turn in that ship. And one of the things that we have not been very good at, that we are committing to being better at in the next 5 years, is disseminating what our research findings are, to engage the publics more rather than just that academic space. And if you were following the news, you would have seen us re-sign the MOU with the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industries yesterday, and a recommitment there as well. The principal would have spoken yesterday about the Sargassum Seaweed Symposium that we had, and actually the document resulting from that symposium in 2015 is on the desk of every government within the region. So that, as she said, to quote her, we don't have to throw our hands in despair. And we want to continue doing that. The deputy principal was responsible for the Zika redeveloping the engagement around Zika, and how can we respond to that threat, and I'm sure expanding into chikungunya, and again, in an effort to ensure that our research findings remain relevant to the economies in the region. I spoke about access, alignment, and agility, and one of the things that the university remains committed is how do we improve the lives of the peoples in the Caribbean, whether they're within the Caribbean region or whether they're in the broader diaspora. And that is really what we're here to do. Now, our business is education, and we're recognizing that it's education, but it's not education for and of itself, so that the retooling is going to be important as well as the new technologies and the ways that we engage with those technologies come on stream. How do we, as the university, reposition our peoples to take advantage of the new opportunities that come on board? And my last comment here, because I'm about to see the sign, how do we move our peoples from just being consumers to actually be producers? And when I was speaking with David earlier, this phrase, and I haven't developed it yet, so you're hearing it for the first time, I have to develop it. How do we move from sugar to sweetness? Can we really compete on the same products and services and goods that everybody else is doing, even with a new platform of the internet? Or how can we develop, and this is my green verb, so my apologies up front, how do we develop goods and services that are non-duplicable and therefore allow us to be competitive no matter who tries to duplicate those? So when we have our cultural industries, and I hear about the cultural industries bill, how can we assist in making that and monetizing that for the betterment of our peoples? How do we develop the mindset, remove our parents from a fixed mindset of lawyer, doctor, engineer, to the new opportunities that are available in new industries that are yet to be developed? And I end on this one. The university is mindful of this, and we are very proud of moving we have a desk called the Student Entrepreneurship Empowerment Development Scheme, which allows students, not just technology students, in fact, this is open to the entire campus, to bring their business ideas. And while it is not yet a business incubator, we see that within this new strategic cycle as becoming a business incubator. Come with the ideas. The students actually do get exposure. Some of you may actually sit on the panels that the students engage with to flesh out their ideas. We are very thankful for FCIB because they've invested $150,000 over the last 5 years in venture capital, in developing some of those businesses that come out of the competition that is held every year for those students. And we just had some major funding and key inputs into that. So we're not only talking about how to do it, we're trying to encourage the student body to really develop their own entrepreneurial space in this new economy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to sit on this panel. Having listened to my fellow speakers, it sounds like we are coming from the left field. You heard my bio. I'm with Fujitsu. We're a regional company. You may hear the accent is not Barbadian, but I'm based here in Barbados. We are very much in the digital space. We have always done traditional IT services. And this year, and this panel discussion is very timely. This year, we're actually embarking on our digital strategy, where we're bringing together all the projects that we've been working on across the globe in different areas of both government and private sectors, health and safety and automation and cloud and all the buzzwords that you've been hearing. We actually have active bodies working in these projects. And in Barbados, what we struggle with is launching or introducing these projects or having meaningful discussions that could progress to implementations, because then we are told, it is nice, it's good to do these things, but we can't, because I can't digitize those records, or I can't move this from onshore and have it even near shore in the region. the laws don't allow this. And what that does for us is that it probably gives us more time to hone our skills in building up these capabilities and practicing them elsewhere. Because as I said, we're regional and we're doing digital transformational projects in the other islands where we are allowed, where the legislation has progressed to the point where those things can happen. I'm not sure if you heard the lunch speaker just now, where Jamaica has actually gone full speed into their ID card project, and that's something that we have envisioned and we have started discussing, and it is still being discussed here still today. That's something that we would like to see move forward and go live if possible. So we have the projects across our locations. The projects are in train. We fully understand the concerns, the security, and the location of the data. And we are here to bring that spin, the non-business, the non-government, the non-UE, the IT spin to the discussions here today.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like now to, just to firstly pose one question. I'd like each panelist to answer. I'm not going to say a one-word answer, but in as few words as possible. Yes. Do you think that it's realistic that Barbados can develop a digital sector that is an engine of economic growth?
You want us to all do it in a chorus? Yes.
It's one word together.
Okay. Are the folks in the audience in agreement? Okay, I heard a no. Please come to the mic and address the.
Do you want us to say something while he's going to the mic?
Okay.
Just one caveat to the yes. Yes, of course, this is possible. One of the challenges that I see, one of the opportunities, let's flip it to the positive, is that we need to re-educate our populace that the platforms of which you were speaking for the last 2 days are not just for, and all the Baydens in the room will know what I'm speaking here, are not just for the bright people. Because if this is seen as science and technology, then you're almost immediately going to eliminate the access to those who don't think they're bright in STEM. We have seen the issues with mathematics. We've seen the issues with computer science and so on. We've seen the issues there where our students across the region are not performing as we would expect. And this part now is personal. And I don't think it's so much that they don't have the capacity or capability, but it's how we are approaching the education. One of my challenges with how we are doing, I have 3 daughters, and they keep me grounded in what's happening. My husband is more of the one in the culture, but I now know what up the thing is, and I now know what pop down is. It took me a long time to get here. I finally got there. But if we continue to segment computer studies as a separate topic and not see how we can disseminate the use of technologies across the entire spectrum, then we are still going to be having this discussion 20 years from now. So while I'm not saying that it's important to do the computer science and so on, but it has to be accessible to all. And I thank the Chinese government for the investment. But if they're just going to be doorstops, having the tech without an underlying shift in pedagogy or how we're going to use it, we are going to be having this discussion in the future.
So, my name is Hallam Ho. Hi, Susan. So I'm saying no, and everybody's saying yes. So why am I saying no? Because I'm saying that for the last 15 years, we've been saying yes, 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 yes. But for the last 15 years, what has been actually happening is no, 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 right? And then we have the question as to why is it no, and why are we not so far ahead, and why we are 12 years behind and 15 years behind Estonia. And can we do it? Yes, 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 right? But it's just like, again, we had some private discussions here on the IGF Barbados and where it's going. And you actually have a plan. You actually have the leaders driving. Do they actually know where they need to be traveling, where the car needs to be going? Are they on the right roads or on a bypass that's going wrong in the opposite direction? And then if we look at the models of Estonia, countries like Estonia, I get my inspiration from there. There are leaders in the whole digital economy and all this we've been talking about. You can become an citizen of Estonia, not catch a plane and go there. You can benefit from all the services, the wonderful services from there. So my question is this: why is it that after years of initially for a few time, short while, I could have gone into the registry and got my birth certificate for my daughter so she can give it to her people in the United States University in a couple of days, and now all of a sudden when I go in there now, I have to join a big long line and we're back to square one again. Why is it that somebody is paying their land tax and 3 months later, you cannot get that check passed by the bank because it hasn't been passed through the government yet, which says it wants tons and tons and tons of money, but it is still in a paperless society where everybody's counting out those checks, and therefore it cannot get the money to go through the banking system and get the money to go into government revenues because of the systems that we have in place. So yes, 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 we can. No, 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 we're not going there. And I'd be happy to hear when we're going to start.
Yeah, that sounds like a government question. All right, I would answer by basically, I said, setting some context. I guess everyone's basically aware of how the government structure, the red tape, bureaucracy. I would add that basically I was in government for the last 17 years, and we're very much still paper-centric. If you look at the UK, for instance, in 2005, under Tony Blair, they had a digital-first strategy, which basically means that everything or just must be done digitally, and that was the policy. All right, so you must start with the policy, a strategy, a vision, all right, and be driven from the top. All right, so my personal belief is all comes to leadership, and leadership not just from the top, but leadership at all levels. You need to get that buy-in and that shared vision in terms that we are going digital. I find that one of the major hurdles is legislation. As I mentioned earlier, we were able to achieve all the way there in that work, which is basically connected all government agencies. I would say the project was executed seamlessly because it involved no legislation. All right. So I want to ask a question about, for instance, our ID card. I know that project was around for a while. It's still it's at an advanced stage, but I understand the issues that actually legislation. There's supposed to be some changes to legislation. There's other outstanding projects that will have an impact on business facilitation as well, which comes back to legislation and prioritizing. For instance, procurement. E-procurement is something that I think if you really want to have promote e-government, have an open society, have transparency and accountability, you must look at your procurement process. And I'm a firm believer that that is a process that should be electronic. Give everybody a fair shot to basically know what's going on, as opposed to the present system where, if you're not in the loop, unfortunately, you could lose out. All right, so, and from a customer-centric perspective, an area of grave concern, and this is something that we want to address in this new digital strategy, is the whole issue of online payments. That is a bug. That's a bugbear. I could tell you from discussions with colleagues in the ministry, the biggest bugbear was that transaction fee. Government don't want to pay that high transaction, 3 to 4% transaction fee. All right, but it's something that we're going to actually have some discussions with some vendors and stuff to see and negotiate, because there are no other solutions, other payment solutions out there that I suspect. My goal is that by the end of this year, we will have a solution in place. We already started discussions with some vendors. It was good to see in the news recently that a company like K. Shepherd launched a full-fledged e-commerce facility using online payments. All right, so I will stop there for now, but just give you that's just basically a little snippet of what we plan to do.
I believe we have a question from the audience. Could you state your name and who you're with, please?
Good afternoon. I'm Philip Jackson. I'm a research student at UE. One question, one comment. The question is, if you were to suggest to the government of Barbados a sector that is ripe for experimentation in the use and adoption of digital technologies, which sector would you suggest? And I want to agree with Mrs. Mahon that we have to help our people to reimagine themselves within the global economy as producers rather than mere consumers. But I think we may be overestimating the challenge. And that's why I agree with you again, is that we probably need to use different terminologies so that people can reconceptualize what they are already doing in terms of creating value in a digital marketplace. Because sometimes the terms we use are exclusionary, and people say, oh, that's not for me, that sounds way above. But when they really get a chance to understand what it's about, they say, but I've been doing that a long time ago. Right, so I think part of that problem is the literature we read a lot, they come from a certain socio-technical, socio-economic background, and they speak in certain terms. And that lexicon is exclusionary. So we have a challenge, the university government, to help our people to reimagine what they're already doing in terms of value within a digital economy. And after reimagining that, to the world. So let me hear about that sector that's ripe. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start the ball rolling and kick it off. So your first question, I would say, in my opinion, I think the creative industries is a sector that is ripe for that, mainly because a lot of the products that are created out of that industry are extremely, are readily able to convert to a digital form and translate very quickly to downloads, views. But the Caribbean has no lack of creativity, no lack of imagination. So on the input end, as you know, in terms of a lot of the songs that we have now are influenced by Caribbean rhythms, Caribbean themes, Caribbean undertones. So we've always been the people in terms of the creative sector to color the sound of the world. And that's not going to change anytime soon. So on that end, I think we have no lack of imagination, of input. But the products that can come out of the industry are really able to be put into a digital form, like I said, for download, stream, etc. So I think that's one area that I hate to use the term low-hanging fruit. I hate to use it, but for lack of better words, a low-hanging fruit area that we could look at. The other thing I want to comment on in terms of language and use and that kind of stuff. In doing work in Africa and working with some entrepreneurs there, I think sometimes, and in Caribbean we do it too, when we consider development, either through technology or otherwise, sometimes we forget to bear in mind that the developing world have some unique nuances. That it's not Estonia, it's not California, it's not Silicon Valley. There are unique things that make us who we are, in terms of infrastructure and history, etc. And one of the things that I found that the continent of Africa did especially well in terms of course, their commerce is embedding technology in already established patterns of work. So they weren't trying to build a spaceship. Nothing wrong with trying to build a spaceship by any man. But what they did is they used technology or integrate technology into already established roles of work and things they were doing within their culture already. Once you have people using technology to execute the basics, what they do already, then you create a platform for, hey, maybe we can build a spaceship. But as a region, we tend to try to build space first, not dealing with the development issues that we need on the ground for basic living and surviving, and then wonder why 10 years has passed and we've not gone anywhere. Because we need to build with the ideology that we need to make sure take care of first things first.
I think another industry that is ripe is education. And we are already beginning to see some of those products. I think Aries comes to mind, Aries Technologies and so on come to mind, of building products that are easily accessible. I know we at the university, even we are looking at allowing access. And part of our new strategy is recognizing that not all of our target can be physically present. Over the last 5 years, we've invested a lot of time and resources in ensuring that the product that we output, not necessarily from the student point of view, but how we deliver to the student, is of the highest quality. So we spent a lot of time in our teaching and learning, our pedagogy, in the systems that are put in place. And now that we have reached where we've reached, we find that many of the lecturers, in fact, it's now being pushed from the bottom up, where lecturers who don't take advantage of the platform are being questioned by the students. Why are you not taking advantage of the platform or e-learning platform? I know one of the visions for the next 5 years is having the opportunity to sit at your desk no matter where you are and access classes, access blended learning. The model that I personally think works best is a blended approach. We find that the throughput through virtual only is not as high as we would want, but having the blended approach where some of the artifacts, some of the objects can be embedded through podcasts or vlogs or blogs and so on, and then you have the active interaction face-to-face. And we are really reimagining, to use that term again, how we are doing delivery. For those of you interested even in postgraduate study, the whole idea of microcredits. So rather than the model of an intense 10 months, what if you can spend a summer and get credits and then complete that over different summers? So having the opportunities, and then some of that is saleable to the rest of the world. I saw a study recently that ranked the Caribbean number 7 in our our primary and secondary education. I questioned a lot of how they got there, but I revel in the fact that in the world, if you're going to put us number 7, I'm not going to argue, and so on. But the members of the diaspora over the last few years have been coming back to the region so that their children can be educated here, and we've seen that over the years. If we can find a way to package some of that and deliver at source rather than having them come. Now, having them come means either bringing the money in for accommodation and so on, but education is ripe for this as well, across all levels.
Yes. Unfortunately, I didn't get in my education bit, so I'll have to endorse my selection that education is prime, because we did start an education journey years ago with EduTech, and we started a digital curriculum, and it started, but the uptake was good, but then we got challenged by the technology. We outgrew the technology and it didn't upgrade, but now we are. I keep hearing how connected we are. We have LTE launched now, the fastest connectivity. We have internet everywhere. There's free Wi-Fi. I'm getting speeds at my house faster than most business places. So the bottom line is we're connected, which means the technology challenge no longer exists. So therefore, in our school environment, no longer can we say, well, we don't have enough bandwidth at this school or that school. Bandwidth is there. Let's go back and revisit that idea of making the classroom digital. There are enough providers begging Microsoft and the Googles that are willing to bring classrooms from the internet and have it accessible to our primary and secondary schools. That way, we can have regional programs that are common themed and they follow the same syllabus and we can be testing at the same time. Some of the technologies that we're looking at in augmented reality, virtual reality, where you can go field trips across the world right from your classroom. It is possible. The technology is here, and we have the connectivity more important than any. Thanks.
I believe we have another question from the audience.
Good afternoon, Lisa Evanson, Evanson Strategy Consultants, Inc. You segued into my question, actually, which is what we're looking at now seems to be an attempt to reach parity with what is happening internationally. But one of the ways that smaller countries have surpassed the norm is by looking beyond parity. So Japan realized it has a completely aging population. They are now the lead in robotics worldwide because they looked at their problem and tried to solve it in advance. What do we have, economically, socially, whichever, in Barbados that we should be looking in advance to solve so that we're not just trying to fix legislation for current, but whilst we're fixing for current, can we address this in the future so that we don't have to come back to this place again?
Would any of the panelists care to address that?
Yeah, we got some good comments. I would try to. I take your point about basically the whole concept of leapfrogging. Estonia basically did it they were independent in 1991, so they basically did achieve it in less than 20 years. And I would say that basically, as I was mentioned before, we have the technical infrastructure, right? Technology is no longer a factor, so the issue obviously is, as mentioned before, the people and the process and leadership. And I can't stress enough how important leadership is in terms of promoting the whole internet society. Just now education was mentioned. If you look at, I always like to draw examples, UK now, primary schools, there's actually a curriculum, where coding is actually taught at primary school. It's actually part of the curriculum, all right? So we need, and if you're talking about future-proofing your workforce, we definitely need to at least start there looking from the ground up. All right, so we've got to start from the bottom. And also, I missed the discussion this morning, but even in terms of gender, if you start at that primary school level, obviously gender is not an issue because basically both boys and girls will be basically learning and getting that foundation in basically to operate in the knowledge economy. All right, so I will stick to by saying you must have that common shared vision and you must have that leadership. Right, because, as I say, it's more than technology. I don't think our challenge is technology at the moment.
Right? We have an online question. So.
Hi, this online question is from Melissa Richards, and it's, how would you say Barbados has progressed in technology, in connectivity, particularly in the rural areas, and how can this be mapped to a current connectivity plan if it exists?
I guess I could answer that. In terms of that, obviously that relates to the whole concept of digital divide. I will actually argue that basically that's not necessarily an issue in our context. The statistics were actually showed in the previous presentation, where if you look at our penetration rates in terms of mobile, for instance, mobile phone, broadband access, even 4G access, is basically 100% coverage. All right, so I don't think there's a case where there's pockets. Even if there's pockets, I don't think it's that significant, right? Because even if you don't have broadband access via the PC, even our mobile penetration rate and our smartphone penetration rate, you still have access to high speed and internet access. So it's a good question, but I do not think that is actually an area of grave concern for us when it comes to digital divide.
Yeah, I want to touch on, can't remember the lady's question. Yeah, so I want to touch on her point, just make it's a brief comment. So we live in the Caribbean. We live in a archipelago of islands at the equator, right? Now, that unique position gives us context of two things that the world will always need and where we should be leveraging our research for technology and information. One is agriculture, because the world will always have to eat. The other one is energy, because the world has to be driven by power, be it solar, be it wind, be it water. Our sugarcane industry was driven by wind. Our windmills, we were one of the leaders in that space during that time. So I find, again, sometimes we don't tend to look at what we have very close access to, what makes up our immediate context, and ask the questions of what does this mean not only for us, what does this mean for the world, for development, and for competitive advantage. So I'm saying that the space of agriculture, food security, food sovereignty, yield management, all those areas, as well as how do we power the world for the next 1,000 years, because we can't do it all for sure, right? And we are in a unique position just by our geography to begin to ask those questions and answer those questions.
Good afternoon, Jeremy Jones, Internet Society, Barbados chapter. The point you mentioned with respect to us having a lot of infrastructure in place, with respect to technology, access to internet and stuff, that's great. But we find that in Barbados, at least from a governmental standpoint, we're seeing behind the 8 ball. And from my standpoint, I think it's about time Barbados has a dedicated ICT minister. Barbados, the ICT always seems to be an afterthought, right? And that is a challenge, especially when we rely on ICT for everything. I mean, we can use ICT to improve, fuel security, education, healthcare. But until we get to the point where from a governmental standpoint, people understand this is what we need to move forward, we will always be that one step backwards.
Yeah, I guess I definitely concur. Yeah, that was basically one of a recommendation that we had a few years back, and in terms of looking at the whole governance, because governance is important in terms of the whole structure. And I guess we're a little bit disappointed when they had obviously when the ministries came out and stuff, and it's basically the same format. Yeah, but basically, if you look at best practice around the world, you usually have a minister of ICT. Even the whole concept of a CIO, a Chief Information Officer, you'll find that the more progressive countries will have a CIO. Jamaica recently actually had a Chief Information Officer. Actually, had the pleasure to actually read the inception report, a very good report. But know what happened? The government changed. He had to resign. The actual head of eGov, which was basically their e-government unit, actually was fired. Right? So they have to start all over again. So that is an issue that, lucky for us, is not necessarily an issue where once the government changes that the plan goes out of soil, it must definitely have that buy-in.
I mean, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, as you think. We are looking at, using models that are proven
Exactly.
models that are working. So rather than trying to design it from scratch, just try to replicate the model, whether it be just Trinidad or Jamaica or somewhere else.
Yes.
So that would definitely help us to move forward.
And I will also add to, from my experience, I think Antigua, for instance, had a dedicated IT minister, Dr. Mansour, a couple of years ago, and you find that he was basically champion behind a lot of initiatives. Correct. And stuff. And you see Antigua actually rose when it comes to the e-government readiness index. St. Kitts similar, right? Because you have someone dedicated to promotion and pushing.
It would also help to improve our image and for people, governments, other countries to take us a little more seriously, at least from an ICT standpoint. Because right now, as it stands, as I said, it always seems like an afterthought. Energy and stuff. All those things are always put at the forefront. I mean, our current minister, portfolio is fairly broad, and that doesn't lend itself to benefiting ICT in any way. And it becomes a major challenge, especially for us. And I guess that's one of the benefits of now starting. Obviously the Barbados chapter, the Internet Society. Hopefully we can bring some more of these things to the forefront, and help move Barbados forward.
I actually thought when Hanseley took up the mic, he was about to throw his hat in the ring.
Just want to mention one thing, that even though the infrastructure, this is about the digital divide, and yes, while I agree that the infrastructure is there, we have to be mindful that there are some in our society at different socioeconomic levels that can't access that infrastructure.
Yes.
And if we are really serious about moving towards an internet economy, we want to ensure that everyone can come on board. I find it difficult to understand that at this juncture in 2017, while we do have resource centers throughout the island, in the rural areas as well, those resource centers are closed on Sundays. Those resource centers are closed half day on Saturdays if they're accessible at all. So that I know that when my child's first project came home, I was shocked because she was 4. And had I not had access to the internet and a printer at home, the pictures of the vegetables that she was supposed to have in place for the next day could not have happened because I'm not an artist, and my apple would not have looked like an apple. So what I'm saying is that while we have the infrastructure in place across the island, we have to ensure that the digital divide does not divide us into different layers, and it doesn't have to do with race, it usually has to do with class. So that we provide access, and then it becomes the difficult question, is this going to be a right? And if it's a right, then is government expected to ensure that everyone has equal access? And then the final question is, who pays?
Hi, this is another remote participant, Charles Walton, and he says, as the panelist said, the absence of vision by the government hinders the development, and IT organizations must come together to agitate with government to provide the thought leadership to move us.
Okay, I'm going to sort of rescue Hanseley from yet more. It does, however, sort of allow me to segue nicely into a request for some closing thoughts from each of the panelists. I would like each panelist to state 2 things that each of us can go back to our individual stakeholder groups and do. Not just talk about, but actually do in order to progress this agenda. Because I specifically want Mr. Hope to come back next year and say yes, 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 and not no, no, no. So what can we do to make Mr. Hope happy? Please, Adrian.
Yeah. One thing, and this is kind of alluded to my opening comments, in terms of the education element of things and the human element of things. So for me, in my space, one of the things that we had to do, and I think would be encouraging to happen, is ongoing education at the different levels, in terms of not only school levels, but in terms of public education, of what is possible, what is available, what the vision is, what needs to happen to get it there, so we can actually stimulate, because this discourse is good, but it remains within these 4 walls. But taking this discourse outside in the public to agitate Joe Public, and of course, by extension, agitate John government to to move on some of the pressing needs that need to be addressed within this space. So I think that just a really targeted public information campaign needs to occur, so that education happens across the board, so that all persons of all classes, as mentioned by my dear colleague, are informed of what's possible, what's available, what can be possible, and we move towards what's the word I'm looking for? A better future.
Thanks, Adrian. I guess as we move now towards the knowledge economy, I guess we're still on with the knowledge economy at present, we definitely have to have a paradigm shift in terms of how we do things. So I mentioned earlier the whole education system. So you have to basically convince the decision makers that ICT should basically be part a parcel of the country development model. It's not all about it. It's basically tried and tested. If you check basically all the countries in terms of leaders in the city or in government, they've checked the growth rates. And it's obvious, right? So I guess from my perspective, I have to do a better job, I guess, in convincing decision makers of the importance of ICT, and I hope that at least going forward that we will have better dialogue, understand the importance of leveraging ICT for greater efficiency, which can obviously lead to growth and stuff. So those are my two, I guess, issues, not necessarily issues, but causes.
First, let me thank David for throwing that question cold to the panel. Two things in our space, and that I think is actually possible within the next year or two: reorganizing the way that we offer our products and services to our communities. And I know that digital transformation is on our agenda in a big way. So as I mentioned, with the blended learning, and having those artifacts or those products available to our various publics. That's one. A segue from that is finding a way to commercialize our research. One of the things that we have not done as yet at the Cave campus, we see more of it at the Mona campus, and they're really heavily involved in their marijuana research, and that has led to certain products and so on in the marketplace. You would have remembered Professor Headley, who died many years ago, and his whole thrust into solar energy. But commercializing the research, more so than just disseminating the research, would be a segue from number one. And for number two, stronger partnerships between industry and academia. One of the things that, again, we are mindful of is giving the students the opportunity to experience the world of work while they're still students. Quite often, that is one of the bugbears for us. And having tighter academia, industry, and international partnerships will go a long way towards ensuring that a work-ready force is available at the end of their tenure with us.
Thanks. And to continue your discussion, what I would ask people to look at when they leave from here and say, well, what are they going to be doing differently, or how can they agitate this change as acquired? I would say we need to be a part of the solution. And to do that, we have enough technology and companies and all these different products, and I think they're just in isolation. We need to look at what is our biggest challenge. What is impeding me from doing my day-to-day going about more efficiently? And then looking at, well, okay, how can I, as a citizen, a learning student, undergraduate about to leave, be a part of that solution? What can I bring to the table? And then work towards finding tangible options in solving these problems, because these are the options that we will push forward for getting attention and where the focus needs to be. We can't keep bringing solutions and trying to find problems to solve. So those are my two thoughts going forward.
Okay, at this point, I would like to thank the panelists for what was an engaging and educational discussion. And we look forward to having more of these discussions in future. And I'm going to hand over to Ashel now.
Thank you, David, for moderating the panel as well. And thank you to the panelists.